and I got to get clear on like what's important to me. And I think what's important to me is enriching and empowering other people's journeys. So I think in a weird way, still playing with USA volleyball, still being a professional athlete, I think I can connect at a much larger rate with those other athletes. So there is like kind of a clinging to still being that person. But at the same time, it's like if those things were to drop, maybe I have more free time, maybe I have more energy, I have more of a need to commit to that work, to be of more service. And so it's like, kind of going off on a tangent, but it's just this thought of like surrendering, just like, and I don't know what life has in store for me. I don't know what source, universe, God is going to take away from me or give to me, but it's just like continue to surrender. And that doesn't mean like to give up. It's like whatever's in front of me, I'm going to do the best job I can, commit to it, like all my heart, all my energy. And if something happens and it takes that away from me, just like surrender to what's happened and just like be very curious and open to what life is making room for me to move into.
I had this really interesting conversation yesterday with a friend, Emma, and we talked about what it means to identify as something and what it means to identify with something and the impacts of those, especially if they are transient in essence. So when you identify with being, for me, I used to identify with being an athlete, or you identify with being a volleyball player, basketball player, high grade student, or any of those things. And what ends up happening when those things leave is that a part of your personality leaves with them. And so I've started to identify more with things that aren't transient and that I can subscribe to as part of my personality, rather than something that could potentially leave me at any point. So it's something that I could have if I'm homeless or if I'm the richest person in the world. And I think something very interesting about the story you told with the boy in the Puma watch is that often when people subscribe to things that are transient, they end up being so attached to those things, and those things are the only things that can bring them pleasure, and in turn those things also bring them suffering. And that's the fundamental Buddhist tradition, is that the suffering is brought on by desire and craving, and desire is the root of all suffering.
Yeah, let me see if I can find so I found this stupid meme on Instagram today. Let me see, but it's the same thing. Let's see. So it was so it was like a barber. It's like, what do you want? And like, it's like nothing. Desire is the root of all suffering. And the barber's like, say no more. And it's like a guy like cutting like a Buddha's hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, as an athlete too, it's like you've played in those games where it's like you have an attachment to like, oh, this is an easy team, we should win. And then the game starts and it's like 5-1 the other team. And it's like, that's not how this is supposed to go. And then you get flustered, you get frustrated, you get tense, you start to push more, start to make more errors. And it's just like, you don't need to do that. But because maybe in the beginning of the game, the coach is like, let's go out and win 3-0. Now you have like this attachment to something that you don't have complete control over. And because you have this attachment, when it's not working out, now you start to hurt yourself even more by pressing and pushing. And so I completely agree. It's the same thing with people that are like, you know, you ask them like, who are you? And it's like, well, first and foremost, like I'm a dad, I'm a mom. It's like, no, you're not. Like at any time, like that can be taken away from you. Then who are you? You know, then you're someone that has like depression. And it's a big like stoic thought, right? It's like, yeah, we're going to grieve, but like, how long do we need to grieve? Do we need to grieve for 10 years, five years? You know, what does that process look like? And with the attachment, I think it prolongs our suffering. People maybe grieve their entire lives because they believe that they lost something that was, in quotation, theirs. It's like, no, everything's on rent from the universe. Nothing is ours. And I think we need to have that detachment, even though it's really difficult. But that attachment can bring so much more joy and love. Stoics have a practice called negative visualization, or when I first read it, I was like, that's stupid. Second read it, I was like, that's pretty dark. Third time I read it, I was like, that makes sense. And so they give the example of like two fathers putting their daughter to bed at night. One puts the daughter in bed and says, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. The other one puts the daughter to bed, says, I love you, and like imagines like losing her and the feelings and the emotions that would come up from losing his daughter, knowing that at any time he can lose her. The next day, the first father, oh, good morning, how are you? It's good to see you. Okay, bye. Second father, just like that, like deep, overwhelming gratitude for another day with his daughter, knowing that any day he could lose her. And instead of, maybe reading the newspaper or on the phone or, sorry, I have a call, I can't do this. It's like you're that much more present with them, knowing that anytime they can be taken away from you, right? When that first father loses his daughter, it's in like, he's going to grieve like crazy because he wasn't present for her. He always thought he had another day, or there was going to be that wedding, et cetera, et cetera. The second will grieve, but know that in the back of his mind that he was as present as possible with her, and he was the best father possible because he knew at any time he could lose that daughter.